Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wisdom Chat. I'm Phil Holdsworth of Aurum Gold, and my guest today is James Jones, Head of Consumer Affairs for Experian. Welcome, James.
Good morning, Phil, and thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I know that the subjects that we're going to cover today are going to be of particular interest to our listeners. Especially if they're wanting to take back sort of control of their finances and find different ways of doing that. And looking at credit reports is one of those ways. James, just tell us a little bit about the work that you do and about the work of Experian.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So I'm Head of Consumer Affairs at Experian, and I've actually joined Experian from university almost 3 decades ago now. And I've spent the best part of that time advising people about credit reports and credit scores, helping people understand, improve, and use their credit history to access affordable credit when the need arises. And my small team at Experian sort of leads our public education work, tackling misunderstandings, helping people understand the things they can do to improve their credit scores, and so on. And I think it's an incredibly important part of the work we do at Experian. So we're a data company. We're probably one of the world's biggest data companies, certainly around credit and financial services, which is kind of a large focus, but not the only thing we do. And the role of the credit reference agency, which is the function that we perform in the UK and several of the markets, which people probably know Experian because of, is to act as a bit of a go-between in the data sharing process between different banks and lenders. And they basically work together to collectively pool information about the credit that we all use, how we repay it, what our credit limits and balances are, and that sort of thing, with credit reference agencies like Experian, so that when we want to go to a new lender that we have typically no track record with, they can, with your permission, sort of tap into that shared pool of knowledge to understand what sort of track record you have managing credit in the past, to give them a feel for how you're likely to behave in the future, and then they use that to decide whether or not you're the type of customer that fits their profile and their lending criteria. So that's kind of our main job. Yeah. And I mean, we, as a result, we look after a lot of information on behalf of lenders and of course the public. So that comes with lots of responsibilities around keeping the data secure, doing our best to make sure it's accurate and up to date. But linking back to my role, I think trying to do this as transparently as possible, and proactively seeking to educate the public about the work we do and things that people can do to take maybe more control of the process.
Yeah, I was just thinking what you were saying earlier about some of the myths, I suppose, that people believe about it, and maybe as a result of those myths, not really engaging with their credit score, their credit reports. Like, for example, blacklisting, and or the fact that if you check your own credit report, that might affect your credit score. I mean, what you've done some work with YouGov, haven't you? Some research recently through the Credit Awareness Week. And
that's right. Yeah. So we run an annual campaign called Credit Awareness Week in March each year, to really redouble our efforts to tackle some of the popular misunderstandings about credit and credit scores. And anyone that's worked with me before has probably heard me say several times that credit reporting, credit scoring is probably one of the most misunderstood areas of personal finance. There are just so many myths and misconceptions. And so we have this annual campaign, and to support it, we do an annual survey through YouGov to sort of get an update really on the number of people that have checked their credit report, know their credit score, and also people's understanding of the issues that we you touched on there. And I mean, every year, we can report some progress. So the number of people that, for example, think there is a central credit blacklist of people who just won't be lent money by anybody, maybe with the exception of loan sharks or something like that, is decreasing. So this year, the figure for the blacklist one was 73%. Now that's still very high, and it still shows too many people are in the dark in terms of how credit reporting and credit decisioning works. Now that was when we first started Credit Awareness Week back in 2017. That was about 80%. So it's moving in the right direction, Phil.
Yeah.
But clearly, there's still some work to do, and there are other popular myths as well. So I think 27% of people think that credit reference agencies like Experian decides whether or not people get a credit card. About a third of people think that previous occupants of your address can in some way affect how you're assessed for credit. And worryingly, about 14% of people, and again, all these statistics are slowly improving year on year, but it's still a lot, and it can still lead to some people, making poor decisions and holding them back from achieving their financial goals. 14% of people think checking their own credit report or credit score in some way damages their credit rating. So these are all things that we work very, very hard to tackle, so that people can make decisions based on the facts.
Yeah, I'll tell you what really struck me, because one of the things we talked about before was about the numbers of people not checking their credit report. So there may be all manner of reasons why. So, for example, not being aware, or some of these myths that people sort of believe. But 49% generally of people don't check their credit report, and then that rises to about, 65% for between the sort of 18 to 25 year old bracket, and not necessarily appreciating that this is actually part of taking back control of your finances. Also having access to your credit report, your credit score, and knowing and understanding what those are. Was there anything else that really struck you in this year's sort of findings?
I think, what you say there, I think reflects there are a number of dynamics there. Some people just aren't aware that they can check their credit report. Some people are, but they think, I think it's fine, I'm not going to bother. Other people may be a little bit fearful of what they might find. So there are a whole range of things going on. I know you often talk about the psychology behind manage their personal finances, and I think that's really relevant here. We had a stand at a recent show in London called the First Time Buyer Show, and one lady came up and talked to us and said to me, I'm planning to apply for a mortgage quite soon, and I've been meaning to check my credit report for ages, but I heard that doing so actually reduces your credit score, so I decided not to. And that's just a classic example of someone misunderstanding how it works and missing an opportunity as a result, because hopefully she will should have went away with an updated knowledge on that point and will have checked the credit report. She might have found as a result a way to improve the track record, and as a result improve her chances of getting a really great mortgage deal. So that's the opportunity there, and that's why we work so hard to tackle these things.
I think go on, James. You finish. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I spent quite a long time in the 90s actually running our consumer help desk, our kind of public telephone help service, and I lost track of the number of people that I spoke to who'd been refused credit after moving home. They had just assumed as a result that it was the address that was the problem. Maybe they'd received debt demands sent to the previous occupier, something like that, and that had backed up their belief that the address was blacklisted. And as a result, they changed their behaviour. So some of them would ended up sourcing borrowing from someone down the pub, for example, because they thought there's just no chance of getting a mainstream loan or credit card. So these are all the things, and I think another one, I don't think it's a major issue, but we hear from, we work very closely with the wonderful debt advice charities like National Debt Line and Step Change, Citizens Advice, Christians Against Poverty, of course, and we hear that typically people who need help with problem debts delay getting help for a whole range of reasons. Going back to that psychology around money,
Yes.
talking openly about money and admitting maybe if you're struggling, that sort of thing. But some people say when questioned that they delayed getting help because they were concerned about their credit score. And it's sort of perverse in a way, because if you are already struggling, then your credit record, will reflect that. Your credit score will probably already be damaged. And actually, the reality is, the sooner that you take control of the situation with advice and support from one of these debt advice charities, the sooner your credit score will recover. So these are the sorts of challenges out there, but we look at them as opportunities to reach and help more people.
It's interesting what you're saying about people who've got this a belief, for example, that by checking their credit score, that would actually reduce their credit score. And we've got a thing called confirmation bias, where people have a belief and they look for all the evidence that proves that belief. But it's a little bit like driving down a road that's full of traffic lights, and the only lights you ever see is the red lights. And so you're convinced every time I drive down that road, all I get is red lights, but you forget the green lights. And it's just interesting, when you said about the psychology, how people just land on something, and then that becomes, yep, I told you, it's a confirmation of what I've always believed, and therefore it influences their behaviour.
Well,
and you've
you
seen
know
that.
what, that kind of sort of quite accurately characterises how most people think of credit reference agencies as well. Because every time you apply for credit or some sort of service that includes a kind of credit element, so it could be like a monthly energy contract, a mobile phone contract, broadband, TV, all those sorts of things, as well as traditional financial products, mail order, buy now, pay later, those sorts of things. The chances are they're going to come to us and do a check on your history and then factor that into their decision making. And actually, I think most credit applications are accepted. But that goes on in the background sort of seamlessly most of the time. That's those green lights, using your analogy. But it's when people hit a problem, a snag, that they start to think about, oh, I've got this credit report, I need to contact Experian. It's those kind of negative moments, if you like, where people do typically tend to engage with us. Although it is changing, more people are taking control and kind of monitoring their credit scores. But still, there's a big, there's probably a majority of people that only see credit reports as an occasional thing to think about, and more often than not, maybe when there's a problem. And that's a challenge for us, and that's something that we're really trying to change. And I mean, one of the challenges and therefore opportunities that we identified a few years ago was a number of people that don't really have much credit history. So that they have no information or not enough information really to calculate an accurate credit score. We've termed this segment of the population the credit invisibles.
I have an example of that, James, because in my own family, because one of my daughters, her and her husband, were trying to secure their first house, but because they didn't have things like a credit card and they'd not taken out a loan or anything like that, they really didn't have much of a credit score at all, and it became a barrier for them. In fact, they were being encouraged to do certain things. I mean, what would you say to people like that if they find themselves in a position where they need to find a way of building their credit scores? What kind of things could people do to do that?
Yeah, well, it can be a challenge, and it affects lots of different types of people. People that just turn 18 that haven't had the opportunity to build up any history yet. People that are new to the UK, because credit reports don't tend to travel over international borders. And if you come out of a long-term relationship where the other person has managed all the money and had their name on the bills and that sort of thing, you can suddenly find yourself kind of invisible, and it can be difficult to even get a bank account in your own name or something like that. So, well, we've got lots of advice on the Experian website, and other sites such as Money Helper around there's things you can do to start to build that all important financial track record. And once you sort of get some information recorded, it's a bit like a snowball effect. It becomes easier and easier. So You know, the
Yeah.
typical things are like making sure you're on the electoral register, getting a bank account in your name, even if it's a basic account, that will start to establish some
Yeah.
track record for you. You know, getting your name on some of the household bills. So many providers of household services like you know, energy, water, broadband do now routinely register monthly information with the credit reference agencies. So all those sorts of things. And then, you know, if you can trust yourself to manage a credit card responsibly, then that can be a great way to build on that.
Yeah.
And there are credit cards aimed at people with poor credit scores, you know, credit builder type cards provided by some mainstream providers, some specialist providers. So to say that we've got guidance on those sorts of things on the website and elsewhere. We also launched, I think a couple of years ago now, a service called Experian Boost, because we're always looking at ways to bring in more, you know, relevant and helpful information into how we calculate people's credit scores. And this Boost uses open banking, which is just basically like background technology that enables people to authorize organizations to access data from their bank accounts, transactional information about what you spend your money on, for example, and to use that to basically provide a valuable service to you. And what Boost does is look for specific pieces of information in your bank account that we can use to justify raising your credit score. Importantly, it will never make your credit score go down. It's only a positive or no change type proposition. And on average, we can raise people's credit scores by, I think, about 15 points. The maximum boost is about 101 points.
Wow.
And for people with little or no financial track record, you know, that can be a really helpful way of actually getting a step up the ladder, if you like. It's a free service. You know, I'm pleased to say a lot of people have signed up to it and benefited from it.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I know for years you've been very much sort of driving education around sort of credit scores, credit reports, and so on, and really raising awareness. I mean, I can't remember what you called them, but I remember the characters you used to carry around to the exhibitions and so on. It was like bringing your family with you. Type of thing.
Yes.
Those cardboard cutouts.
It's about 10 years ago now, we started to invest in you know, financial education and teaching youngsters about money. And we focused on younger children, on primary school children, around the time that I think Money Advice Service had commissioned some research by University of Cambridge into kind of attitudes and behaviours. We had a chat about this the other day, didn't we, Phil?
Yes, we did.
And that said that by about the age of 7, you know, most people have kind of developed attitudes to things like money that will then probably stay with them for life. So we thought it's probably a good time to start that conversation with people. So we created a tool, a teaching resource called Values, Money and Me, working with teachers and parents in schools in Nottingham. And those were the characters that we used to take along to those shows that you were just talking about, Phil, some characters from the actual resource. And it seeks to kind of get children just thinking about what money is, how it works, what their role is in society, and how they can use money positively and think about money positively. And it's been incredibly popular. In fact, I've probably got one of those cardboard cutout children in the garage somewhere. Which sounds a bit wrong, actually.
Yeah, I know it was quite funny watching you walk through the exhibition hall with this character under your arm. but no, I would say that the level of education and information that you guys give out is quite substantial, and even the other day I was invited into a local senior school, and one of the things they asked me to talk about was credit reports. So they were very mindful of the fact that, you know, these are a key component to building that financial well-being. And it's good to start early. I think it was year 10, so 15, 16-year-olds, getting them to start sort of considering things even at that age, and sort of starting to think about building good behaviours.
Yeah, but it's important, and we've actually created a resource for older learners more recently called What's the Score? Sort of aimed at 14, 15, 16-year-olds. And what that does is it turns the tables and gets youngsters to think about themselves as a lender, and they
Yeah.
get to assess a number of applications from different people with very different backgrounds. And it brings to life what credit scoring actually does and the impact it has, because ultimately you then get to identify, based on each applicant's credit score, which loans they would qualify for, and as a result, how much they would pay extra for having a poor credit score. Because that's one of the things we've probably not touched on. Credit score is not only a gateway into getting credit, but can impact frequently how much you pay for it, and other services as well, like energy and insurance. So there's definitely a kind of financial incentive to investing a little bit of time in checking your score and seeing if there's ways you can improve it.
No, that's brilliant, James. Thank you so much. I'm conscious that we're out of time now. We've probably gone a little bit over, but this is a really interesting subject, and I know it's very helpful for many people. Do you still go into, as Experian, do you still go into schools and provide sort of education that way, or do you direct people more to your website and to the Money Helper?
Well, I mean, we've primarily focused on providing resources that teachers and other organisations can use in the classroom. And actually, Values Money and Me has a kind of a family learning zone as well. So parents and carers can use it at home too, which I think was very useful during lockdown with all of that homeschooling. But we do also have quite an extensive volunteering program experience. There's certainly schools in the areas where we have offices. We encourage our people to kind of go into schools and talk about personal finance, as well as topics like careers and things like that. So yeah, absolutely, we look for as many ways as possible to reach out and help people and support the communities where we operate.
So in terms of anybody wanting, if they've got any questions following this this episode, where would you like to direct them? Where could they go for the information that we've kind of been talking about?
Well, there's a heap of advice on the Experian website. You can check your Experian credit score for free. You can use it to shop around and find, if you're in the market for a new card or loan or something like that, we can show you your eligibility before you apply, cutting down the chances of being refused. We've got that boost service, that free boost service we talked about. There's lots of education on there, lots of guides on building a track record from scratch, tackling a problem, correcting an error, all those sorts of things. So that's probably the first place I'd go. We've also got, if you kind of want a conversation with us, we're very active on all the social channels as well, sort of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Twitter. Ask James. Our customer service team are on there, which is Experian Experts. So sort of give us a shout if you need some help.
Brilliant. That's fantastic, James. James, this has been brilliant, and I really appreciate your time. I know what you've talked about has been really, really helpful to people. There's so much more, actually, we could cover. And also your work in the industry. I mean, your work as director within MALG, the Money Advice Liaison Group, which have been going for what? Is it nearly 30 years or about 30 years, something like that?
Yeah, I think it was 1987 or something like that.
Yeah. So
that is also an incredibly important part of the work we do, sort of working with other organisations involved in the world of money and credit and debt to help people, particularly people that are in financial problems.
Yeah, so that's wonderful. James, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for coming along, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.